Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Bull Breakdowns here on the Guilty as Charged podcast YouTube channel. Here with Barstool's very own Jack Kennedy. You may know him as Kenjac from
Mhm.
Lights Camera Barstool and The Bracket. But most importantly, we know him because he's Barstool's, a lone Chargers representative. He's holding down the fort for us over there. So, Jack, how's the last week been for you?
The last week has been unbelievable. A lot of Michigan fans in my office, so I was a little worried that they would be a little bit more pissed off than anything. But they were, I would say, the mood for the Michigan fans was more or less like, I'm just happy we won, so we don't really care
Yeah,
anymore. So now they don't mind. You know what I mean? If
yeah,
if we stole it before he won it, I think they'd be more pissed off. But now I'm just happy, man. It was like I think I tweeted it right when they signed him. That is, I think, the biggest moment in my Chargers fandom so far was them signing Harbaugh, because every other moment was they got to a place and then they lost. You know?
hmm Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's like the 2018 playoff game where like, oh, they beat Lamar and then they just get wiped by the Patriots, or
Yeah.
even the mid 2000s. It's like, yeah, outside of that,
I'm
yeah, no,
like, holy
this
shit!
was definitely the biggest
Donald
thing.
Butler got a strip sack on Giovanni Bernard in a wild card game, and then they just get smoked by Peyton. It's like the next
I
game.
remember that week, like trying to. I was so convinced. I'm like, man, they're gonna go in there and like they're gonna be Peyton. They
Yep.
did not.
So
Uh,
stupid. And then when they re-signed Butler too, I remember I was like, Donald Butler. I remember that game. He has the juice. I don't even think he made it to
yeah.
the next season.
Yeah, I creased the hat today specifically for
For
Jim,
Harbaugh.
since that's his preference.
That was a
Uh,
great video. Yeah.
yeah, it was a great video. I wanted to ask though, before we get into the Harbaugh stuff, your friend at Barstool, Mr. Big Cat, came up with this video where he wanted to trade the number one pick for Justin Herbert, and like, did the company reprimand him for this? Like, what have you spoken to him?
No. It's I respect him going for any trade, any sort of train you can get rolling if to try and get Herbert.
Right.
I respect it. I get the idea behind it. I mean, we do fake ones all the time, or like, hey, maybe someone wants to trade us number 4 overall for Joey Bosa or number 3 overall, and it's like it's probably not going to happen. But maybe if you get people talking about it enough, you put a little pressure on someone.
Right.
But I think Poles is a good GM. I don't think he's that good at a GM.
Yeah. Yeah, I also don't think they can trade him because they would incur like a historic amount of dead cap
Yeah,
or something
that
like
would
that.
be a disgusting hit. It would be vile.
Yeah, I remember just looking at over the cap one day, like when I saw that video, I was like, I don't even know if like the NFL would allow this.
Yeah,
But
like it would break the money system that everyone has this. That would be crazy.
yeah, it was worth a shot. But getting back to Harbaugh, your boss over there,
Mhm.
Portnoy, obviously, won the national championship, like you said, so he wasn't too mad. But what were your like initial thoughts, and where do you kind of think this Harbaugh thing can go?
So I remember that, like right when they started this cycle, I was in the same mindset where I was at when they were talking about Sean Payton, where I was like,
Mhm.
just the reality of what this team has done over the last like I 2 decades. It's like they don't really hire guys that cost money. They don't. They're certainly not going to trade picks for a coach, which is why in Belichick, in my mind, was just never even. It was like a thought at all, especially in the same thing with Peyton, because they ended up giving up like a first and a something, right, for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just never going to happen. But Harbaugh, like the more steam it got, it was just like I was in my head. There's no way, and I'll be the first to admit it. I was like, there's a slightly better chance than Harbaugh, or slightly better chance than Belichick, but like still feels so unreal. So like the fact that they actually went out of their way to do it is crazy. The fact that not only is he one of the biggest coaching, like I would say he was like the biggest, like most I would say coveted name that was out
Mhm.
there, because you look, Bill doesn't have a job right now, which is
Right.
crazy. So I mean, if
Yeah.
that's the case and they were able to get Harbaugh, it's unbelievable. It's like like a once in a lifetime or once in a fandom feels like moment that they actually get the guy, and it was just pure. It was like a literal ecstasy. Like I was sitting there, I think it was a Wednesday, I think, right? And it
Yeah.
was yeah, because I remember it was literally just my editing day. I was just sitting there and like, oh, just like working fucking around on like Adobe or whatever else, and I just see the notification and like my eyes light up, the neurons start firing, and it's like legitimately gonna be like an actual adrenaline rush, and it was just what a day, and what a week.
Yeah, when that came in on Wednesday, or I think Wednesday, there was some report that it was like, oh, he might still go interview with the Falcons tomorrow. And I'm like, man, if we hear that he's on a plane to Atlanta, I'm like,
Yeah.
then there's going to be so many angry people. There's going to be so many mad people. But they kept him in LA and eventually closed the deal.
Yeah.
But obviously, like I think it's not only that you're bringing the program there, right? But you're also
Exactly.
getting Ben Herbert, you're getting Jesse Minter, right? You're getting
Mhm.
kind of the whole Harbaugh experience, and he's taken job interviews in the past with the Broncos last year before they hired Sean Payton and the Vikings, but it seems like this was the time for him to move. I'm sure that a bunch of incoming NCAA violations probably had a
Yeah.
little bit to do with that. But still, to go and make this move, and he had all the leverage to do it. After
Mhm.
national championship win. I want to ask you, when you saw the Ben Herbert videos, like just that were circulating online, he's just like a certified glass eater, no?
Yes, exactly. It's like you want your strength and conditioning coach to look exactly like that. He is the archetype, bald, facial hair, psychopath, and just like him doing like all these like sayings and all these like different little like analogies, metaphors, whatever, and just like screaming at people, and then the fact that they all like him is crazy. And so like I was talking to somebody who used to be he was a player for Harbaugh. I don't know if he wants to be named, so I'm not going to name, but he said that like so he played with him at Stanford. He said that, and this is a very interesting, I think, tidbit about Harbaugh and his like dedication with strength and conditioning. He said that Harbaugh, he makes strength conditioning doctors and trainers meet every day to talk about recovery plan for a single player. And he said, I didn't think this was different until I got to the NFL and every team was different. He actually was in Chargers mini camp at one point. He said, for example, quarterback could hurt his shoulder and the strength coach could have him doing one exercise. The trainer could have him doing another. The team doctor says, what the hell? Like, you can't be doing either of these for the next 3 weeks. What are you doing? And strength coaches have less power in the NFL because top guys do their own thing. They want to leave them doing vacation. They can't do like workout facilities certain times. He's like, but with Harbaugh, it's a very organized crew. So like all of that being very like cohesive, I think is something that this team has been missing forever. And so if this strength guy, if Ben Herbert is like actually talking with the medical team, talking with these guys, and like having a cohesive plan for each player, like that is just so in my mind. Like, why have we not been doing this forever, right?
Right. I think they've like tried to fix the injury bug, and then there's like 1 year where it like kind of works, and then it just regresses to the same thing that we've always done.
Yeah.
The Anthony Lamondo report yesterday that he's mutually parted ways, and James Palmer's like, oh, he's a big fish out there. It's like it's
That was crazy.
agents carrying water season after pretty much every Charger, including Justin Herbert, breaking both of his hands twice.
Yeah. I almost wanted to like tag Arjun and be like, can you just send him like a war like a war lost to injury graph of Chargers over the last like 3 years? I guess since Lamondo took over, like just
Yeah.
it's
The
always
the
bad.
the first year, I think they were like somehow like a top 10 health team, and then
Mm,
after that they were 16th, but like technically they didn't have the highest number of injuries, but it was all the important players
exactly.
pretty
Yeah.
much, including Slater and Mike Williams and everyone. And then last year they don't even have what is it, adjusted games lost anymore because Football Outsiders sadly got shut down.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would have been bottom 10 for sure. So I kind of wonder, like you mentioned, just everybody being in sync with the Harbaugh program, is if instead of giving Ben Herbert strength and conditioning coach, like they give him director of sports performance or
Yeah.
something like that. We have no idea what his role is going to be, but I kind of wonder if like Harbaugh wants like somebody at the top of all of that, and maybe pulls somebody else for strength and conditioning coach. But we'll see. I guess how that develops over time. Uh, any other like thoughts in terms of like how quickly do you think this can become a playoff team?
So I think I'm in the space that probably most Chargers fans are at, where it's like we're going to be in cap hell, obviously, for this
Mhm.
next year at least. Even just working off I think how much dead cap does J.C. Jackson have? Like 22 million or something crazy like that, right?
I,
It's
I
something
have,
disgusting.
yeah, it's something. I think it's still, is it 11 million this year? I don't know. I think, yeah, it's not good.
It's definitely not good to play for another team, or maybe not. He might not even be on I guess, the Patriots next year. But like they're going to be in cap hell for a year, no question. But like they have high draft picks for like this entire draft at the top of every round. So like that I think is very helpful. The fact that, and everyone's talked about this too, just the fact that like Herbert knows, or not Herbert, rather, Harbaugh knows all this. Too many H's now. I know they made the jokes about it, but there's too many H's now. The fact that like Harbaugh knows every guy and like, oh, he's recruited these people. He knows all these players. He played against them. He's had some of them play for him. That's like so helpful in getting good depth in these later rounds, especially with the GM that you know and are familiar with. And that's something that has been just like, I was looking through the list of our drafts, how weak we are or were on day 2 and 3.
Yeah.
It was so bad, man. It's so bad. And the fact that like we can have a guy come in and actually get good depth out of that, which is something they've just been missing forever, is just it could be a turnaround. It could be a 1-year turnaround. We have no idea. And free agency is a whole nother bag. I don't know how they're going to tackle that, but obviously some pieces are going to have to get moved around.
Yeah, that's the thing. The drafting was the most frustrating part because all of their drafts basically relied on like, did they nail their first round pick or not?
Exactly.
And like, you just like can't build, I think, a consistent winner that way, right? Because when the pick kind of does go sideways, like say Quentin Johnston so far this year, then it's just like, okay, well, what is the rest of the class providing? And
Yes.
so far, like the consistency from 21 to 23 in terms of these drafts of the Staley era and the longer Telesco era, like you just can't build a team like that. And I think it can really accelerate your rebuild. Like you look at the Rams, right, who had like
Sure.
14 draft picks or something last year, and if you hit on just a couple of them, right, like, and you get Puka Nakua and you get all these guys in there, then it can be pretty quick to go from where they were 4 or 5 win team to go into the wild card round, right? So I don't I don't have the expectation they're going to be a Super Bowl team, certainly, like as they kind of work through the cap hell, but I do think they can contend in an AFC, that has like, some of these wild card teams, but they obviously have, Mahomes and the Chiefs in their division,
Yeah.
which, is always still kind of going to be the thing until they at least, find a year where they get over it.
Yeah.
How much of this, I guess, has like changed the way that you like view the organization? Because like that to me is like the biggest kind of question here. Because like I never had the perspective that they were cheap from a financial standpoint in terms of like paying players, right? Like I mean, they gave Herbert a bunch of money, have given out so many of these extensions, but I've always thought it was more of a power thing than a money thing, right? Like I think they would have kind of gotten some of these coaches had it not been uh, you know, for, the Chargers maintaining control, but seemingly they've given final personnel control to Jim Harbaugh per multiple reports. And I feel like in terms of going after head coaches in the past, that was like kind of the sticking point. Is if you want like a Bill Belichick, if you want an Andy Reid, like they're gonna want that kind of power. And so I thought it was interesting that they finally, I guess, agreed to give Jim Harbaugh that as opposed to just the money, which, I never had qualms with them coming up with that much money, but it was just about like the power, I guess, there.
Yeah, I guess the perception, at least on mine, was always that like outside of the cap is where the cheapness comes, right? So like within the cap space, like if coaches' contracts came out of that, right? Like it would probably be a different story. Like if every coach had to get within a certain level or something like that. But outside of the cap, whether it's that the whole coaching things, like they hadn't hired, I think, a coach that was most recently a head coach since like Schottenheimer. But after that, like they had elevated Norv, who had been a head coach, I think, for 5 minutes before that, and
Mhm.
then all coordinators after that, first time head coaches. But outside of that, like their battles with Faulkner and San Diego, like their perception is there for like I think a good reason. But I think that maybe to a degree they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, which I understand. Like you don't want to make a massive, you could say John Gruden sort of screw up, right? And very, very understandable. But like when you have a guy that's a very proven commodity at every single level, like Jim Harbaugh, like John Gruden had been a loser before. Yeah, he won. He's also been massive loser at certain multiple points in his career. Jim Harbaugh's never lost. And he's been at the helm, like the essentially creative director, the all hands correct director of like every program, and he's been excellent at it in every single level. So I mean, I understand wanting to break the bank open for this, and not only for this, but for the rest of his guys too. Like they had to
Mhm.
buy Ben Herbert out of that contract, which he was getting paid like more than any strength and conditioning coach in football or college
Yeah.
football or
I
something
think it was
like
like a
that.
million a year or something like that.
Crazy. And the fact that they're opening up for him, they're opening up for like Minter, all these other dudes is nuts. And I think it has definitely changed, I would say, my perspective of the Spanos family for sure. Because That is something that it's in the back of your mind always. And it's the reason that I never thought Harbaugh was truly an option. It's the reason I never even considered Bill or Peyton or any of these guys. And I think that this totally shatters that. It's like literally anything is possible now. If they're
Mm.
opening up the checkbook, it feels like anything's possible.
Yeah, I also talked with Daniel Popper, who kind of said like, John Spanos might transition from like being involved with the football ops to then like kind of being more part of like ownership as like Dean Spanos, gets older. And the more I thought about that, this was like 2 or 3 weeks before they hired Harbaugh. But the more I thought about that, I just was like, like if you kind of get this CEO guy who's gonna like run your team for at least the next 5 years, then that kind of allows the Spanos and Spanos family to like think about some of these other issues just in terms of like market share in LA and like all of these things as opposed to running the team. And I kind of wonder if that was something that went into this as well. Um, I wanted to ask, we talk about the big four contracts. That's Keenan, Mike, Bosa, and Khalil Mack, who they restructured last year, and
Yeah.
it's why they're in cap hell. They decided to double down when everyone was like, I don't know if you should double down. What do you make of what you think they should do and what you ultimately think they will do with those deals?
It's weird because like it was funny watching the GAT guys trying to have to call in for do a phone a friend for the cap space where it's the
Yeah.
same thing in my head because like I don't know how it would work with like the dead cap issues and all that. But like in my head, you get the most for Khalil Mack because he's coming off a career year and everyone needs a pass rusher. But
Mhm.
also the team that he would go to has to be in such a specific spot. I don't know who would be
Yeah,
like who has the best cap space and is an actual position to make a move. Like maybe the Texans. I feel like they're in a
maybe.
but they have that spot really kind of filled out. So like there's teams that I think would take the risk that you can get a little more juice out of him. Bosa is just like the hospital squad of Bosa and Williams is rough. Like I don't know what you do
Yeah.
with two dudes like that where it's just they can't like Bosa has Bosa played a full season since like 2019? I don't think so. Like Mike Williams constantly just felt something. Although I think not last year, but 2 years ago, he played like most of the games, right? With the
Mhm.
second season of Lombardi. But like these guys, it's very I don't know how you trade them and get anything worthwhile in return, which is fair, but it's like how do we get the cap off the books is the biggest problem because like they need to be able to
Right.
move and get other players. But then again, maybe with this new strength and conditioning staff, maybe they have the best years of their career later on. I mean, look at Keenan Allen. He's 32, 31, had just had the best year of his career.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with Bosa. I kind of wonder where the league is with him because if you watch or like read any of these like GM survey polls that come out before the season, like everyone still kind of considers him, or at least prior to this year where he was more injured, like a top 10 edge rusher. So I kind of wonder if he can coast off of like name value a little bit for the Chargers and like maybe I don't think they're gonna get anything close to like a day 2 draft pick, but if they could get like maybe something in the beginning of like day 3, round 4, round 5, for Bosa and a team, they eat some of that money and get that back.
Yeah.
That to me isn't like the craziest thing. Mike, I think, kind of falls into the same boat, but I do think the issue with trading him is this is a really deep wide receiver class, and there's going to be teams who are going to try to go after their own guys, before they, absorb Mike's cap hit and to like give you a draft pick to do it.
Mhm.
Right. And then if you're talking about like trading future picks for like Mike after the draft, then it's like it kind of becomes a less valuable trade there, like anyway. So yeah, both of those are tough. I really hope Mike is the one where like I really feel for him because,
Same.
obviously torn ACL and he's, kind of a legacy Charger for the last like 7 years, even though
He turned it around too. That was the
yeah.
like he really like before that one season, it was 2 years ago. I was like, wow, like Mike can't stay healthy. He hasn't really had a great
Mhm.
year in a while. Like maybe he's gone, but he turned himself into a must retain player.
Yeah, and even in that Vikings game, he had like 100 yards
Yeah,
and like the Keaton Allen
a
passing
couple
touchdown to
touchdowns.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was insane, and then unfortunately, the knee thing happened. So I think both of Bosa and Mike are probably gone. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with Mac because Mac was apparently pretty tight with Staley, which is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why he decided to come to the Chargers originally. And now I kind of wonder with Staley gone, not that like he wouldn't want to stay around for Harbaugh, but I do kind of wonder if he's like if this is like a rebuild with a coach, that I'm kind of unfamiliar with versus do I want one last chance kind of at that ring with another team.
Yeah.
And according to Daniel Popper, he also contemplated retirement, after the Jacksonville game. So I really wonder how much, there is left in LA for him. But obviously after the season he just had, I hope he sticks around.
I mean, maybe if Staley gets that job with the Rams, maybe he just like
Oh,
goes across town.
jeez.
That would be an easy transition for him if they want to eat some cap. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. No, I didn't think about that. Also, by the way, like I Ian Rappaport is like the funniest dude because like all those reports he puts out where like it was after the Packers game, I remember where he was like, "Come on, guys. Like
Yeah.
they lost, but it's not Staley's fault." And then he was like, "Oh man, he's got 3 interviews lined up, and the Dolphins just got rid of Vic Fangio, so then they can go after Staley. Like that's why
Yeah.
they did it." And I'm like, "Come on."
Dude,
Like
they're so funny.
the water carrying operation and like that's how news gets spread, but like I still can't like believe that. But if
Those
he
are
winds
great.
up in how do they have any of those teams on the schedule next year? I really would like to see a Jim Harbaugh versus Staley revenge game. I don't think they
Uh,
do because they just played the Packers, but
yeah.
I would like to see what that looks like at the playoffs or something.
Yeah. I wonder if for Bosa, just to circle back, I wonder if they could get because what did they get for Chase Young? What did the Commanders get for Chase Young? It wasn't
Was it a
obviously a top pick. It was.
third round pick or something?
I mean,
Um
realistically, how different are they? Edge players, injury history, just have the name recognition. I would say Bosa's name recognition was even higher
right.
than Chase Young's, although he's obviously older than he was when he got traded. Another Ohio State guy, like I don't know. There's a lot of comps
Yeah.
here, maybe.
Yeah, the only thing is that Chase Young's a lot less financially expensive. That's
Correct. That's a
yeah,
big
that's
problem.
yeah. Yeah, he went for a third round pick last year, and I wonder if the Niners even like re-sign him.
Oh, that man, that we had a bad look that last game. That was rough.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting because yeah, like you said, the name brand value of those players, like it's kind of the I talked about this with Arjun, but everyone kind of says like, "Oh man, the Chargers have this stacked roster, and
Every
they just
year.
like have it every year. Like they just haven't been able to put it together." And it's like they have names, but it is not like a stacked roster, right? Like in a traditional sense,
Dude.
where people know who Eckler and Mack and Bosa are, but like they're not what those guys used to be.
Dude, it's the worst in my office, man. Every goddamn game. It's like I come in the office and they're like, "Oh, what do you mean you don't have a run game? You got Austin Eckler." And I'm like, "Dude, he's never had a 1,000-yard rushing season. He averaging like 3 yards a rush. Like he's not because he's getting you fantasy points in a PPR league does
Right.
not equate the Chargers having a rushing attack. Like it's just
Mhm.
it's this weird misconception. Like, well, you guys have Joey Bosa and Derwin James. Derwin out with a meniscus tear or whatever a couple years ago. Joey Bosa just not in the field. Like it's just there's a bizarro misconception with these team because the name value is there, even though these guys just don't play.
Yeah, and I'll be curious just to see how that changes because now I feel like people because they won't know as many names. Like if they get rid of some of these contracts, now people are going to be lower on the Chargers, and then like
Yeah,
maybe that's what we need. We don't need the offseason hype machine anymore. Like that's dead. We have to bury it after
dude.
the last couple of years.
Basically, as long as we've been fans, they've been the dark horse
Oh
candidate.
yeah,
Like it's every single year. I would say after like the 2010, or yeah, 2010, like number one offense defense team. Like every year after that, be like, oh, look out for the Chargers. Like, watch out for them. They got Denario Alexander this year. Who knows what could happen? It's like it's. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's just always been that way.
I still remember like I used to get Sports Illustrated delivered to me as a kid in like 20 and no, it was like 2014, 2015 and Peter King would do like his annual Super Bowl prediction and one of the years I remember being excited. I was like, "Oh, it's Chargers Falcons. That's the prediction." And I'm like, "Here we go." The Falcons eventually got there. The Chargers are
Yep.
still very far away.
Very far
Um,
away.
yeah, but I just remember, yeah, I was like, so the offseason hype machine even like predates like Twitter with the
Yeah.
Chargers. Like it's just been a constant. Um, All
We need to
right.
be underdogs, which this is kind of going to be hurt by Harbaugh because now it's going to be even
Yeah.
more so. Even if we have no players, if that every single player we just got mentioned gets traded, it won't matter because Harbaugh's there, and they're going to be like, "Fucking Chargers going to win the West this year."
Yeah. I give it. I'm betting that's the narrative that comes in like June.
Yeah,
Like solid 2 months after the draft, no one has anything to talk about, and then someone restarts it. Then the Chiefs fans will now think that they're underdogs again when no
yeah.
one thinks they're underdogs, and the cycle just repeats itself year
So
after
I
year.
hate that mentality in winning franchises. It pisses
Oh
me
yeah.
off to know it. Like them, Philly does it too. Like a lot of other like teams where it's like you are the overwhelming over like not the dog. You are not an underdog at any. Everyone's betting on you. You are the winner. You just won a Super Bowl. Like no one thinks you're an underdog. That's a self-imposed thing because you saw like one like Merpo Blurpo for CNBC Tulsa say, "Oh, I think the Chiefs dynasty's done." It's like that is not that nobody else thinks that except for that one guy that everyone clipped. That's it.
Yeah. I just saw a post from like a Niners fan today who was just like, "Man, we're underdogs again." And then
Dude,
somebody, the X like fact checking thing actually put the
the
Niners
community
were,
notes.
yeah, in the notes they just put the Niners are favorites in the Super Bowl over the Chiefs, and I was just like that summarizes the complex up pretty well.
You know, it's had a really rough time of I think trying to adapt here is Raiders fans trying to compensate for this whole cycle has been bad. Then be like, we got Tom Telesco, man. We got Tom. He drafted guys like Joey Bosa and Derwin James. And it's like, dude, do not whatever you do not Google the rest of his drafts like any other pick he made.
Well, it's also just funny, like the cope there, because it's like, oh man, like yeah, he got studs for the Chargers, like Joey Bosa and Derwin James, and meanwhile, like all of a sudden we're like, oh, they sucked like a year
Yeah,
ago.
exactly.
So now it's just like,
It's like, dude, you got it. You just fired a GM that got Max Crosby in like the fifth. Like, what are you talking about? Chargers haven't had value of that kind in the fifth round since ever. Like, are you kidding me? Like Michael Turner or something? Like, I don't even know how far back you'd have to go.
hmm. Uh, what's the level of buy-in that Jim Harbaugh has from you in terms of like hirings and stuff? Because we're on the brink of Greg Roman, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to suck that one down. I still, fully confident in Jim, but it's his team. He'll do whatever he needs to do. But that's the
So,
one that concerns me.
do you think it would be Greg OC or Greg like running game coordinator?
I think it was Pelissero a couple days ago who said Minter was coming in as DC and then used the word some capacity for Roman and Jay Harbaugh. So that makes me think that they're still trying to figure out like what to do with Ficken with special teams
Yeah.
coordinator, and then what to do, yeah, with Roman. Because I think he's going to be the offensive coordinator. Aaron Wilson put that report out first, and he tends not to be wrong on these things. But I would love if they could get Tanner Engstrand from like Detroit, who's
Mhm.
been a name that's been floated around now that Ben Johnson's staying there, and then you can plug in Roman as run game coordinator, and then I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's just like I don't know how you sell like the guy who the Ravens immediately opened up their offense and got Lamar another MVP like after he left. But yeah,
Yeah.
still have the institutional buy-in there. If he's offensive coordinator, I'll live with it. But yeah,
Yeah. I think the big thing with Harbaugh versus almost any other coach is like how they work in service to him
yeah,
because it's like so different, right? Than it was with like Staley, where it's like he's calling defensive plays and like he needs someone on the other side to help out.
right.
I feel like it's like a very clear like organizational chart leading to Herbert or leading to Harbaugh. Again, too many H's. Like how everything links into him and how that like how they all serve his vision or like what he wants to do. So if like Roman is doing what he wants to do on offense, like if he's not like really that like if it's not like almost like with Kellen Moore with us, right? Where it's like he's just kind of doing more or less whatever he wants. Like as long as it's in service to whatever Jim wants to
Right.
do, I'm fine with that. And I think that that's kind of where I fell with Harbaugh as far as buy-in, where it's like he's so different than every other coach out there, and like with very few exceptions, where it's like he is both the brand of the Chargers, which is
Mhm.
great for a lot of players, including Justin, where it's like he's just not I don't think he ever wants to be like the super enigmatic, big, like face the franchise, mega charismatic or anything like that. Like Harbaugh does all that for him, which is great. And I think that part of the buy-in is like he kind of brings his own little cult along that you follow with, and you just buy into whatever his vision is, whether that's through drafting, free agency, schemes, like all that shit. And like I think that is so easy for us because it makes it easier for us to like assign blame, especially right, because like sometimes we'd be like, well, this guy did this thing, this guy did this thing, this guy did this thing, everything's all weird and piecemeal. But now everything is it's like more of a dictatorship just
Right.
run by him, and we're all just like his peons. And I don't mind it as long as we're winning. As long as we're winning, it's all fine.
Yeah, I do think there is something to like Staley hiring like a dud offensive coordinator, kind of like the Lombardi situation. Like that's worse than I think Harbaugh doing it, because Harbaugh has his own distinct, offensive philosophy that he wants to put in place, versus Staley was just like, well, like let me go get the best guy I can find. And I said this on the Gag Pod, but it was like, he had ideas in terms of like, oh, I want to go get Mike McDaniel. I want to go get Kevin O'Connell when he first came here. And then that just didn't end up happening because those organizations didn't let them interview. And then he had to settle for Joe Lombardi. So I do think having a distinct idea of like what Greg Roman like would want to do, I am sure Harbaugh does have an idea for that, makes me more confident than like Staley hiring like whoever the best perceived like offensive mind is at the time,
Yeah.
or a guy he has to settle for. And that I think is like the big win in terms of hiring Harbaugh, is just like they can kind of alleviate a lot of the other like growing pains of a first year coaching staff, because it's obviously not a first year coaching staff.
Exactly. He's had one of sustained success at this level. It's closer to almost like with Staley being like, yeah, Ainsley's the DC, right? Where it's like,
Right.
well, but if Staley was a good defensive coordinator, I wouldn't mind who he hired at DC, right? Or like it's more of a name than anything else, because it's all in service to whatever he was doing anyway. So it's closer to that than it is to hiring, like him hiring Moore or Lombardi.
Yeah. I'll get you out on this one. Completely Chargers unrelated, but give me an Oscar movie or something I need to watch. I don't watch many movies. I don't have time. But
Let's see. I'll go get the collection.
I've watched what have I watched this year? Oh, he's going to go get the collection.
This is the good ones. Here, this is the good collection.
Oh wow.
Right here. We got
are those all the screeners?
No, screeners are always digital nowadays.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise people would rip them. Let's see. Start you off. Sound of Metal, great movie. Ooh. That's a recent one too. Seven Samurai, obviously a classic. The Game, David Fincher. Fincher's an amazing director. Let's see. These ones are a little more eclectic. Obviously one of my all-time favorites. This one, I saw Parasite I think like 6 or 7 months before it came out, from a screener from Cannes. And I remember watching that and I was like, holy shit, this is the best movie ever. And I wrote like a 10,000 word blog on it. And I was like, wow. Oh my God, it's the best movie ever. And everyone was like, great, dude. We can't watch it for 6 months. Like, and I didn't even think about it. My brain was so set on how great the movie was. Memories of Murder, same director.
Any particular ones from this year that you liked?
Yeah, I would say I really like Zone of Interest. Was really good. Ooh. That's a darker one. The Holdovers was really fun. Really like easy watch if you're looking for that.
I keep trying to get the goal, because I know I need to watch Killers of the Flower Moon at some point. Sure. But then I look up the runtime. I'm like, 3 hours 26 minutes, and then I'm like, but then my ass just sat on the couch and I watched 6 hours of football on Sunday. So it's like I could have fit that in if I wanted. I just didn't budget the time.
It's a weird, daunting task, because like it's the same thing when you binge TV, where it's like I'll sit down and watch like 8 episodes or something, no problem. But then I'm like, I gotta watch 4 hours of whatever XYZ movie, and it's just a pain. It's a weird mental block we have, but I have the same thing. When I know I'm walking into a theater for 4 hours with trailers, I'm like, this is rough. I just killed my day to watch Leonardo DiCaprio. But I do it out of respect for the game.
Yeah, respect for the game. I will get on that at some point. But Jag, it was great having you on. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, of course. Just at Jack Kennedy on Twitter. And that's the main spot. Everything's popping more on Twitter than anything else, or X, whatever they're calling it now, I guess. Yeah. That's one of the weirdest bad brand changes, by the way.
I still call it Twitter. I like it. That'll never leave as long as like that app exists.
It's so ineffectual. It's crazy. But yeah, mostly on there. I'm tweeting my sorrows away about Charger stuff nonstop. And obviously love you guys. I mean, like the whole GAC crew, all you guys, when they, all you guys do everything, I'm always on top of it. So, and you guys are great. More analytic. I don't have the time to zero in on football as much as I wish I could anymore. But you guys, I feel like, do such a great job of digesting or breaking it down, I would say, and making it digestible. Because a lot of people, I would say, in the analytical space and film space of Twitter, for football, they'll post things out, they'll put it out, and it's like, I don't understand what you're trying to say.
Right.
This is something you're basically showing me a foreign language. I don't get it. You guys do a really good job of making it a digestible product, something that's not going to sit like a brick in my stomach.
That's how I feel like whenever somebody posts like NBA stats that I don't completely understand.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Nikola Jokic leads the league in VORPs and schnorps, and I'm like, I
Yep,
don't.
yep. Don't get me started on VORP. Don't get me started on VORP. What ridiculous. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Jack. And as always, guys, bolt up.
Of course.